My name is Chelsea Rosti. I serve as the Chief of Staff at Denver Economic Development and Opportunity. Today's panel is titled An Economy for All, How Denver is Creating Equity and Economic Development. Just sort of level setting by starting to say that oftentimes economic development has been seen as an industry sector that's less diverse and less equitable than maybe some other industries and sectors. And we like to think here in Denver that we're really changing the script on that. And we're going to talk through that a little bit today. A little bit of housekeeping. Of course, you're going to see this at the beginning of every session, but a huge thank you to the sponsors. This track is a spotlight track session, and so it's sponsored by Strat Labs. If you've seen any of the marketing out there in the socials, that is done by Strat Labs. They're an excellent marketing partner of Denver Startup Week and have done some great work this year. Other sponsors, we've got Amazon as the presenting sponsor. If you've been over to headquarters, you will have noticed everything that's happening with Amazon. A huge thanks to them and some of our other sponsors here along the way, which you might even see Denver Economic Development and Opportunity there as a sponsor under the growth track. All right, we are going to hop into introductions this morning. So like I said, my name is Chelsea Rosti. I serve as the Chief of Staff at DEDO. I'm going to go down the line here, have our panelists introduce themselves, and they're going to share a little bit about the why behind why they're doing the work that they do and what connects them to the work. So Derrick, I'll start with you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I don't know if my mic is it on? Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Derrick Watson. I have the honor of serving as director for our Denver Careers Construction Program, and I've been with the city almost 5 years now, and I can tell you my why. I worked at the University of Colorado for over 30 years and retired in 2014, and I said to myself, the next step and the next career I get into is one that I want to be able to make a difference in people's lives. And that's when I had the opportunity to start with DEDO. And our program really is focused on construction projects, in particular infrastructure projects that are being funded by the city and county. And a part of what I do is make sure that Denver residents have an opportunity to work on those jobs. And so I'll stop at that and give it to my colleague Seneca.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Seneca Holmes. I am the Chief Officer for Neighborhood Equity and Stabilization. In the why, I think in some ways this was a natural path in my life. My family was very political. I grew up with concepts such as discrimination, generational poverty, social safety nets. I studied economics and political science in school. And so when I had the opportunity to work in Mayor Hickenlooper's administration when I was 23, doing community development, I feel like was just in my blood. I would say there was an evolution, though, through my career. I was always kind of considered myself a policy geek, and so I loved the work when it came to coming up with strategies and approaches to overcome challenges related to community development. I don't know that I fully internalized the importance of the issue itself. That had probably changed quite a bit in the growth after the 2009 recession, when I saw the city change just so dramatically. My neighborhood, I live in Lower Highland. I moved there in 2006. It just changed overnight. The community that was there was uprooted really within a couple years. My seamstress, the person who rebuilt my engine, all of those folks were gone, replaced with multi-million-dollar condos. And more than that, what we started to see, I think, is that there was billions of dollars of wealth that was being created in the city, but it was not being shared with everybody. There were real winners. And there were losers, people who were worse off for the boom, and those are people who were the most vulnerable in our underserved communities, underserved populations. And so, as Coach Sanders would say, that's when I took it personal. And so this is something that is a passion for me, and I love this city, and I want to make sure that there are opportunities for everybody.
I love that, Seneca. Good morning. I'm Adrina Gibson. I'm the Chief Officer of the Division of Small Business Opportunity in DEDO. With regards to my start, I'd say similar to Seneca's, but growing up, I'd say I started early on working around 13 and doing internships and different opportunities within early workforce with youth development. And one of my first opportunities was working with the Denver Chamber of Commerce in the Small Business Development Center, SBDC. And working with the counselors and the small businesses coming in and just seeing the passion, the excitement of these businesses that had just been launched and just trying to get their feet off the ground and how to develop themselves, so on and so forth. Fast forward into going into college, starting at CU Boulder and understanding a lot of the inequities that were already there and the discrimination, experiencing, I'll never forget, the cookie bake sale, which was geared around affirmative action and the various sexist and racist acts that I was dealing with. I had an opportunity to decide whether I was going to go for an internship or go study abroad. I just know I needed a break from CU. That ironically landed me through getting my internship with RTD. At that point in time, they were just getting ready to start fast tracks, and my opportunity was in a box. And so I quite literally had an opportunity to build out the small business program for all of the corridors that we're going to be building. And so many of the businesses at that point in time that had worked with RTD were so small. They were like mom and pop shops. And then to be at that establishment for so many years and to see those small mom and pop shops now be multi-million-dollar businesses with their families taking over, their daughters, their sons, their brothers, their aunts. It just has grown to be a passion for me, and they've become family to me, and so that's why I'm still here today.
I see a common theme, CU, across the board here. Also, Michael Jordan said I took it personal, so he's one of my favorites. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your heart. I'm excited to get into this conversation. So we thought we'd level set with what is equity? How does the city and county of Denver define equity? So the mayor, Mayor Hancock, started an Office of Social Equity and Innovation, and that office really defined what equity is to Denver. And so we believe that equity is when race and other social identities can no longer be used to predict life outcomes. So much like Seneca was talking about what happened in his neighborhood or what is happening to small business owners, those life outcomes can no longer be predicted by social identities. So this is achieved, and this is where we think the meat of our work really is. It's achieved through the advancement of policies and practices that center those who are underrepresented and have been historically disadvantaged because of their neighborhood of residence, age, gender, disability, immigration status, primary language, education, income level, or race. And as we talk today, you're going to hear tones of this come through in different various ways in the way that we're centering equity in our work and building upon that foundation. Where we start at DEDO is hiring and building a culture around the community that we serve. So we feel that it is very important within our organization to ensure that we're representing our community by the people who work at DEDO, that we look like our community, that we work in the same spaces. So at DEDO, we are 52% BIPOC. So that very closely mirrors what the actual population of Denver is. 64% female, 20% of our team are multilingual, and we also have a lot of representation in leadership of women, of BIPOC individuals. We also believe in hiring from within, promoting from within, creating that inclusivity and that equity there. We have a lot of great statistics around that. And so what this does, and you can even just see it in this photo here, but I will personally say it's the most diverse and wonderful place that I've ever worked. You get that perspective, and it really makes a difference. We talked a little bit about this in preparation for this conversation, but I wanted to go down the line and just allow you a little bit of elaboration on this. Derrick, we can start with you.
For us, it starts with recruiting and recruiting a staff that reflects the populations that we're hoping to serve. And you know, how do I say it? When we look at who we bring into our organization, we recruit in areas that serve those populations. I always hear, well, we can't find any qualified people of color. How many of you have ever heard that? Well, you're looking in the wrong places. And so we start by looking in the right place and recruiting from the very communities we hope to serve. And so when I had the opportunity to build my team, and rarely do you have the opportunity to build your entire team, I started looking in the communities that we wanted to serve, and we were able to bring forward candidates from those communities. And so for us, and for me, it starts with recruiting, and recruiting in the communities that you hope to serve.
I'll add on to that. And just a fun fact, Derrick didn't just recruit from the communities within, he recruited within our departments as well. He stole one of the best
stole
of
all
mine.
of the good people. Yeah.
No, I joke, but just, Derrick speaks about with regards to the recruitment efforts and the actions that we take as recruiters. I'll add on to that it also goes to the next level of who is applying and what we're looking at when we are applying. And I say this consistently whenever we are doing interviews and I'm speaking to my team. In this line of work with equity, and specifically in my division, this is civil rights. So you need to have passion or you need to have purpose, because that's going to require grit. You can't see it right now because I've got the color on, but it's a lot of gray. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And so with that, I want to understand your background. I want to know what you've been through, what your life experiences have brought you through, not only in your line of work, but with your family and your social space. I want to understand how you're responding to questions and how you're integrating equity and experience into the work that you would be doing on a daily basis. And for example, with all of the interviews that we have within DSW, because again, this is economic development, and in our space it's civil rights, I always ask the question, because it's not just about equity, it's what social justice matter is important to you and why? And have you taken any action within that? And that is the last question we end our interview on, and every time, and I can tell you that is a make or breaker for a lot of people. They either completely blossom, and I can see there's been people we've started crying in interviews, or you can tell from that this was very fraudulent. This was all a facade. So.
Yeah, I would mirror a lot of what Adrina had said. I love the passion and purpose. Those are two things that are critical. You have to really internalize our mission when it comes to equity. It's no surprise that people of color and women, I think, are well suited to work in that environment because they have personal experience with those issues. Me, myself, I've never felt like there was kind of a false dichotomy where you had to pick diversity or you had to pick the best candidate. I feel like that they've always been sort of the same. And we have candidates that may not be women or people of color, but they really do internalize our mission, and we're happy to have them part of our team as well.
Absolutely. It's about how it's carried out and about that passion, and we see that across our organization and every person, and I think eventually people will find their way out of the organization if that mission is no longer relevant to them or wasn't in the first place. So we're going to get into policy a little bit, and each of these fine people are going to discuss what their work is and how it's really applying to equity in Denver. So we're going to start with Seneca. We're going to talk about neighborhood equity and stabilization. So Seneca, I will toss it to you.
Sure. So Nest really is a variety of investment portfolios that we have touching on all manner of different issues that really pertain to involuntary displacement. So basic human services, after-school services, We have a facade improvement program to help beautify existing businesses along corridors within our Nest neighborhoods. We have an activation program where we provide monies directly to the community so that they're able to come together, whether that's through an event or some other social gathering, public art, things that really physically activate a neighborhood to help build, some amount of social infrastructure. So we have a lot of resources. One of the things that we need to really understand is how to deploy those resources. And so recently, we've had a Nest Neighborhood Index for a long time, I think since 2018. It was 10 neighborhoods. It was along the inverted L, I think, that is commonly referenced, was that's our neighborhoods of most needs, kind of along I-70 and the federal corridors. We had done an analysis, kind of an update of the Nest Index. It took us about a year, and I would love to give some props to my deputy over here, Elvis, who led that initiative. It's really remarkable what we found. We used 10 characteristics within 3 buckets: economic development, social, and business. And we had probably used maybe the most sophisticated data analysis that I think the city has seen. And also, much respect to our data team who helped to pull all that together. And so we've ended up with a model that I think is the envy of many cities in the country. It's been internationally recognized. We went to France to talk about this tool. And so now we have a real systematic way, transparent way of deploying resources into the community. So this is something that we're really excited about. We went from 10 neighborhoods to 18 neighborhoods. Where we used to have the inverted L, we have sort of a circle of neighborhoods around the central corridor, just giving us a better idea of kind of the changing needs within our community. And happened pretty quickly too, just within the last 5 years, we've had a lot of change within the neighborhoods. Something we're super proud of.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I was just going to add on to what you were saying. So what do we do with this? Obviously, we use it as a baseline, right, to see where the most need is. But for instance, with the facade grant program that Seneca was talking about, we're focusing those resources in Nest neighborhoods. And oftentimes we put grants out. Right now we have a legacy business program that we just are piloting, and only businesses within Nest neighborhoods are eligible to apply for our pilot program. Another way that the city as a whole is actually using this right now is we have the new sidewalk fees. So if you're a resident of Denver, you know that that's coming out as part of home ownership, but we are reducing those fees for residents in Nest neighborhoods. So that's some of the work that we're doing to create that equity in the neighborhoods and the places that need it the most. Thank you, Seneca. Really great. Next, we're going to go to you, Derrick, just to talk about your work and what you're doing at DCCP.
Yeah. Can we go back and talk about the
Yes.
map? Because, in our work, we look at it, just imagine a funnel. And at the top of that funnel is where the policy lives. And we've just recently passed an ordinance requiring contractors on city-funded projects to engage and bring people on these projects, guess from where? These neighborhoods. And one of the things that we learned is this has evolved over time. And Seneca has talked about the inverted L, and that's the methodology we used at one time. But you see these needs have changed over time, and instead of an inverted L, it looks like a donut with a couple of holes taken out. But we use that policy to make that requirement of our contractors. But beyond that, these are individuals. These are people's lives we're talking about, and I never want to lose sight of that. And I'll give you an example. One day, me and my colleague was walking down the mall, 16th Street Mall, and I heard this guy just screaming my name, Derrick, Derrick, Derrick. And I sped up a little bit, like, I hope I don't owe this guy any money. And so he caught up with us. He was out of breath. He said, I appreciate the work that you guys do because I'm with the Second Chance Center. And I don't know if you guys know about the Second Chance Center. This program worked with formerly incarcerated individuals. And this guy said, I went through your training program and now I have a job on 16th Street Mall. And not only do I have a job, I have a career, I have a path. And so that's what this is really about. We can talk about policy and programs, but we want to really impact the people, so.
And this guy came and spoke at DEDO's in-service day, and I have goosebumps now. And I've already heard this story, so it's so good. Thank you. Do you have anything else you want to add before I jump over to Adrina?
Let's go on to
okay.
the next slide. And really talk about the context of our program. We have 9 projects currently that have this requirement, and that's about $1.4 billion in construction that we're engaged in that require these contractors to bring in people to work on these jobs from these communities. Our average salary is around $31 an hour. Pretty good salary. And so for us, like I say, we've done it through policy, but we've never lost sight of how it impacts individuals. And so I'm not going to go over all of these stats. You can look at them. But one thing that we have learned is apprentices in construction have a very defined career path. And that's what we want. We don't want folks just to get construction jobs. We want them to build construction careers. And from that career, they'll earn a great living. But the other thing that I think we don't talk about enough is they have an opportunity to start their own businesses. And that's an important element to discuss as well. Not do you just get a good career, but you can actually build your business from a career in construction. So I'll stop with that. Thank you.
And building a business builds generational wealth. And so then you start to see that whole flywheel start moving. So it's really cool, and I love this, and thank you for sharing your work. Adrina, the OG when it comes to equity policy.
I don't know about OG, but I will bring it full circle. So as Seneca has shared the impact on neighborhoods, right? And then Derrick is sharing information that we're pulling employees from these neighborhoods. Full circle, then we have certified small minority women-owned businesses that are working in these neighborhoods, right? That are providing the architecture, the professional services, the construction, the demolition. They are the flaggers out here working in this space. So full-fledged, this is an ecosystem, right? So within DSW, our programs exist to promote equity, maximize contracting opportunities. We look to get those small businesses in the door to the city with their golden ticket to the amusement park, and then to assist them in getting on city contracts, and then to provide them the protections that they need to complete that work, keep their doors open, and work on another contract in the future and grow. So the question is, how do we do this? Because we know that discrimination is alive and well, and in many instances, small businesses, minority businesses, women businesses don't get these opportunities to work in this space. And so through this, we have the ability at the city to actually study the effects of discrimination and the effects that it has on small minority and women-owned businesses in government contracting. So this is known as a disparity study. This tool, which we already know it, we see it on TV, we see it in our experiences through living discrimination. This tool, this study, which is as plain as day, is what allows us to have these programs. We know through the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that discrimination is prohibited, but it is still alive and well. And you see it in every aspect of your life, especially when you are contracting with other businesses. And so because of the disparity study, we have an ordinance as well, which is our Bible. It's one of our playbooks that protects small businesses. It allows us to have governance. I call it the strong arm. And it is the guidance reference to the contractors that are working with the city. And through that mechanism, the disparity and the ordinance, that allows businesses like you out here today to have protections through us to ensure that you can finish your project, not close your door, pay your people, and move on to the next project that's in front of you.
Can you tell us a story or give an example of a business that gave you the kind of moment that Derrick had?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I have two. So the two again, passion or purpose, the things that really drive me is when I see small businesses advocate for themselves through going through programs like these and then seeing their growth. And so in one instance, we had a professional service firm who had, I would say, close to $1 million in back pay for proposed changes that they worked through through indirect verbal communication of their contractor. $1 million for a small business that was made up of 3 people. That $1 million required, before they came to us, they had put a second and third on each of their houses. So they were going to lose their houses. One of the partners was getting ready to divorce because of the strain that this had put on them. I get goosebumps thinking about it because it was a horror story. They came to us in tears, tired, exhausted, fighting the fight, and this contractor wouldn't do anything about it. We were able to pull all of their documentation, because that is one of the biggest keys for small businesses, is making sure that you document everything and that you're always audit ready. And I tell them that all the time. So we pulled all of their documentation, pulled their subcontract agreement, combed through it. Actually, one of my team member here helped me work through it. We went through it, combed through it. I went with them to this meeting with their contractor, and we just hit them line for line, like, you are in breach, you did not do this correct, you did not do this correct, and let's just bring it back to just humankind. Look at what you're doing to this business, and you are doing this on a government contract. They ended up settling with them and paying them over, I think there was only $100,000 to $200,000 that was remaining and unpaid, and compromising getting all of that money back. That business then went on to continue to work on other city contracts, and every time I see them, they run up and I give them a hug, because that almost made them close their doors. And then the second thing that I'll say is that with regards to businesses, I think that it's great to see growth as well. I will speak to Sky Blue Builders, for example. So a small business, certified small business that has grown throughout these years. I've known them for over 10 years now, and seeing how they've developed in the construction realm. Now they're in airport concessions. They themselves are now bringing in certified small businesses to work underneath them. They are learning, they are training them, they're providing them the same tools that we provide them, and bringing them on to work at the airport, working in with Dottie. So those are the type of things that keep me going.
I love the passion that you all have. It really motivates me. So I'm going to snake back and start with Adrina on addressing inequities. So this is a question, I love that it sort of flips the script. So we're talking about addressing equity, but what's the inequity? And Adrina's kind of gone through this a little bit in what she's talked about this morning, but what's the inequity that we're addressing here, and what are we trying to fix? So let's start with you.
So as I've shared, and I think that at least with DSW, and I think throughout all of DEDO, the baseline is discrimination for us. Because folks aren't getting the same equitable action and benefits due to their race, their size, their gender, et cetera. That right there is an inequity. Discrimination is an inequity. It's an action of inequity. And through our specific space, we see it through clotheslining small businesses through bidding opportunities, taking their numbers, taking their intellectual property, and then putting barriers up against small businesses where they don't get paid on time. They're terminating them for no reason. They're trying to bait and switch with regards to the performance and the direction that they've provided. So the way in which we address equity is through policy. If we don't have policy, if we don't have law, if we don't have rules and regulations, it makes it very difficult for small businesses, minority businesses, women businesses to thrive and to survive, because that discrimination, that inequity is so strong. And so I would hone in on the utilization of policies and programs, and then having folks to advocate to you to address the inequities.
Would the vision be someday to be able to work yourself out of a job, like that the world changes so much?
Ideally, that would be incredible. That would be the dream. I think that there would obviously still be more work needed, because once I work myself out of a job because discrimination is no longer alive and thriving, it would then be making sure that it stays as such. And so once you've closed the gates of the underworld, from like Stranger Things, you've got to keep it closed. And so how do we do that?
Yeah, not in Denver, not here. That's what eventually, like, my vision would be for the mission is, like, you don't go there and do that. Like, that's just not the place. So, Seneca, I'll go to you. There's a lot. You said 10 different inequities that we're addressing, but anything you want to talk about here with Nest's work?
Yeah, so I'd preface it a little bit. So Adrina's in a unique position because she's able to run a program that addresses discrimination head-on, because it's buttressed through a disparity study. We aren't able to do that in the city, so we have to address inequities that are really the results or elements of discrimination. And so we do that in a number of ways. As I alluded before, there's a number of characteristics that we incorporate into the NEST index. So obviously, low-income individuals, the lack of education in some communities, English is a second language, or having multiple language within a household, access to technology or to the internet, just challenges that our local small businesses have within the Nest neighborhoods. So we take all of these things into account because we feel like they're all elements of discrimination, but also they're all elements that lead to involuntary displacement. So we have programs that sort of touch on each one of these inequities, but in totality, we're really trying to address something that is much greater than that.
Thanks for saying that, Seneca. And I just wanted to add on to, when we launch programs at DEDO, let's say that we have a grant available for businesses. It's important to us to launch all of the materials. Actually, it's by law now, the city passed an executive order that all materials be launched in the languages that are most spoken by business owners at the same time and at the same level. So a lot of times, maybe in the past, you might have seen an organization launch everything in English, and then like a week later, they have something in Spanish, or they have a little bit over here in Vietnamese. We do everything at the same time in the same quality, and that includes an in-person information session about how to apply, how to get technical assistance, and those are all available in multiple languages as well. For businesses, we default to Spanish and Vietnamese as well as English, because we know those are the most commonly spoken languages by business owners, but we also make it in Denver, but we also make it known that it can be requested that information is available in any language. So that's just another way that we get to what you were talking about, Seneca. Derrick, let's go to you and the inequity that you're addressing, or inequities.
Now, my situation was very similar to Adrina's, and we have policy. We have an ordinance to hold our contractors accountable. But, you know, one of the things I really want to make sure we understand is we're very lucky in the city and county of Denver, because diversity, equity, and inclusion is under attack in other places. And so we're very fortunate that we have the kind of leadership and the type of communities that embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion and make that a value. And that's, I can't tell you enough. I've traveled all over the country talking about my program, and I get other folks saying, well, how'd you get that done in Denver? Well, it's because our mayor and our city council holds these values important. But in other cities, it is not quite the same. So I just want to reiterate how lucky we are to be in this environment that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you.
Piece to that.
Yeah. Yes, please.
To Derrick's point, which is such an important point at this moment in time, especially for small businesses, Thank God that we have leadership, mayor's office and city council backing values on equity. But it is the responsibility of all of you in the community to ensure that that stays a priority. Because if it doesn't, and because if something else gets prioritized, we can lose sight of that. And we can lose federal programs that are associated with small business equity and employee equity and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to make sure that it hit home that it's also our responsibility as individuals living in Denver and surrounding areas to make sure that city council and the mayor's office continue to see that as a value.
Yeah.
I would just add to that, the office nest has not been around forever, right? This is a response to involuntary displacement that Mayor Hancock had identified. And so we really appreciate kind of the recognition within the community of what the need is. But with different leadership, or if we lose sight of our mission or goals, those things can very quickly go away.
I would agree with that. And I remember when we were sitting down with a piece of paper trying to figure out how we're going to respond to this pandemic and what we're going to do for businesses and residents and everything. We felt like the economy was on our backs. How are we going to fix this? And someone said, we just have to think and start and focus on equity first and foremost and build from there. And it seemed really simple and obvious, but it isn't always. And so that is how we distributed the resources that we received from the federal government, is by starting in that place and keeping that our focus. We actually changed our mission since the pandemic to creating an economy that works for everyone. It was something kind of similar to that, but it just really nails down the point. And I will tell you, almost every person that interviews at DEDO says something about our mission, because it just resonates, right? And to what you said about what happened in 2008, 2010, and then the boom, how those opportunities were not the same for everyone. We don't want that this time around as we're recovering from this last recession that happened as a result of the pandemic. We want to make sure that that opportunity and that generational wealth building and business success is available to everyone in Denver. So thank you to the panel for sharing, what your feelings and your heart is there. We wanted to leave you all with something that you can take away today, walk away and go do, much to Adrina's point, the call to action. So I'll start with you, Seneca. What is something that these folks can take away as an applicable word of wisdom?
Well, as a city, and with my office in particular, we are a catalyst. We are an investment tool. We help empower the community, but we are nothing without community partners. And so it really does start with residents. It starts with community organizations, nonprofits, foundations. They are really the vehicles to sort of make our mission happen, to realize real impact in the community. And so I just want everybody to know that we understand that we are limited, but everybody's participation in the community towards our goals, towards equity, is extremely important, because without that, nothing happens.
Thank you. Adrina, I'll go to you. And I'm going to go back to our equity definition as they're talking about this.
Yeah, I would say, and as I continue to reiterate to a lot of the corporate entities, the large contractors, the businesses that are wanting to work with the city, this begins by being an ally. You must ensure that your corporation, your business, your company is an ally to equity, and that begins with corporate culture. If you do not indoctrinate into your bylaws, your policies, your programs, the importance on equity, and not just stating that this is like some policy statement, but your employees are being held to this standard through their employee evaluations, that this is a core value with regards to how you spend your budget, that this is an area in which you hire, that this is an area in which that people are being evaluated through KPIs on how they're treating other businesses and other individuals that are in the midst of their company. So corporate culture is so vital to ensuring equity, preventing discrimination, and just being human and being kind.
Get this right. Do you feel like if you look at just from a bottom line of a business, profit, how do those two things reconcile with each other?
It's funny that you asked that because in the space that I'm in, these are usually the conversations that I have with project managers because their priority is getting the work done on time and under budget, and my priority is protecting small businesses, and in many capacities, those can merge and run right into one another. But with respect to that and paying attention to budget, build it in early. Build it in early. Understand that you may have to pay more money for the necessary training, that you may have to pay a bit more to give a small business that first step. Build it in. Build it into your budget. Build it into your bottom line. Invest in people. Invest in equity. That will be an investment into your corporation.
And into the economy. Anytime you go to a financial advisor, what's the first thing they're going to tell you to do with your assets? Diversify. Right, so the more we diversify our economy, of course, with different sectors and different business types, but with different types of people and different types of business owners and different types of backgrounds, the more solid our economy and our businesses become. Who wants to go next? I don't care. You got something on the tip of your tongue? Derrick, go.
Okay.
Takeaway for today.
Adrina said it best. I mean, she said it in preparing for this meeting and just dropped the mic. You couldn't get a better answer than the one she just gave you in building culture. But let me just add to that. We're your allies too. And so I think a lot of times folks think that, well, I don't want to go to the city. Well, we're here to help. We're here to support. We're here to advocate for you in ways that you may not be able to advocate for yourself. The other thing I think is an important takeaway is we don't operate in a vacuum. The city doesn't operate in a vacuum. When I have questions about how to do my work, I feel very comfortable in talking to my colleague here, Seneca or Adrina, about what we can do together. And so I just want you to know that we don't work in a vacuum. We all work together. And the more we work together, I think the more we can get accomplished. And so that's my takeaway for you today.
And what you did in building your ordinance, you worked with contractors. You worked with other city agencies. You really took the time to talk to people, to listen to perspective. And when you also said, if people need advocacy, we're here. Also, we're here for ideas, too, and places where that equity, maybe we're missing something or there's something that we're not seeing. So open ears, open hearts. Seneca, a takeaway for today.
One more thing would be, we've talked about what we are, and I think there's a misconception of what we are. I can tell you what we're not. We're not against development. We are the Office of Economic Development. We want to see growth in the economy. We want to see the creation of jobs. We want to see new businesses relocate here. We believe that you can do that in a smart way while still addressing issues concerning equity. So I know there's a lot of people that think that you're giving up one for the other. That's just not the case. We think that you could have it both ways.
And it would be better. Do you have a question? Yes. Okay. Yes, time for questions. Let's go.
So I'm a new immigrant to the U.S. and I just moved to Denver, and I'm so glad and grateful to see how much passion there is and how much wonderful work there is. So thank you, first of all. Really impressive. My question is, we all know that to build an economy that works for everyone, workers need to benefit from the fruit of their labor, especially lower income level people need to profit from what they're putting in. What is DEDO doing to encourage profit sharing?
Profit sharing through companies.
With their workers.
Okay, do you want to talk about
Yeah, so one of the initiatives we have has to deal with obviously small business development, but we are putting a lot of efforts towards building an environment that is conducive to the creation of co-ops. And so there's an organization that is fantastic that we work with called Center for Community Wealth Building, and they provide technical assistance for the creation of co-ops. And I believe that they have a pipeline of folks that they're working with now. We just learned about a grocery store that they've helped support. So shared employee ownership, profit sharing, that is something that we think definitely has a space within our economy.
And the state's doing a lot of work in that space too, and there's a lot of really beautiful success stories across the state. I don't want to misspeak, but I think Bojo's maybe going under employee ownership? Bojo's Pizza? Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to misspeak, but just as a fan favorite example of that. So, did anyone else have anything to add to that one? Okay. Other questions? Yes?
Yeah, this might be one for David to answer. What challenges are you seeing with respect to access to equitable capital for small business?
I mean, I'm seeing a lot of challenges. And I'll definitely hone in on what we're doing right now. I know, right here, we've got Michael Beavis. So I will say that with regards to the challenges, they are vast, and they're coming in the space of like equity, insurance, bonding, et cetera, especially when you're contracting with the city. However, the city has several different access to capital venues in which you can seek this capital. So I'd like to invite Michael to speak to that a bit.
Yeah, Michael, our capital extraordinaire. Michael Beavis, Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship here at DEDO.
Thanks. So, hello, everyone. As Chelsea mentioned, my name is Michael Beavis. I'm the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship for the city here with my colleagues. To your point, which you already know the answer because he's in one of my programs, but last year we launched a fund, an equity investment fund, so venture capital fund called the Herman Malone Fund. It's intended to grow to become a $50 million investment fund, primarily to support founders who have been underserved and underrepresented in the venture capital market. So we know founders of color make up less than 0.35% of all venture capital in the United States, and women founders make up less than 2% across the United States, and we're aiming to kind of solve that gap with that fund being kind of the benchmark for other cities to follow. I'll be here all day in this room, so if you want to stick around and ask me questions afterwards, I'll be here.
Thanks, Michael. And he makes it sound really simple, but there's a very complex model that allows us to carry that out. It's not just that, we've got this funding available for diverse business owners. It's much more complex than that to ensure that the funding gets into the right hands. So, yes, ma'am. Gosh, that's an excellent question, and I guess I'll toss it to you, Tony. We have a Tony. Tony might be great to answer this. He's our Chief Workforce Development Officer. There we go. But Derrick, I'll let you start and see if we can fill in the gaps.
Yeah. We studied the construction ecosystem for 4 years to identify what the best practices were in bringing communities to opportunities on our projects. And one of the things that we found is people don't typically tell you that they may have had a background or they may have been homeless or any of those other kind of social isms. And so instead of, saying, we can't do anything because nobody's telling us who they are, we've identified organizations that support those communities. And so for us, and this is an example, I've just issued an RFP that was out on the streets for those very community organizations that support those populations to have grant funding to help them do even more than they're doing and to help them connect those individuals and those populations to careers on city-funded projects. And so we put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. And so that's one example of some of the things we've done.
Yes, and we also have a lot of funding that comes from the federal and state government around workforce. The funding is required to be used in populations, as what you were mentioning. And so we build programming, we build reskilling and upskilling programs for these individuals to get them, you know, more generational wealth, more career building opportunities, to reskill them into industries here in Denver that are in demand. We've got a gentleman in the back, Dom, who is part of our technology partnership, and this is helping people learn careers in technology to earn a livable wage here in Denver, and those individuals are from very diverse backgrounds. We have an excellent equity stats in that program. So there are a lot of different things that we're trying to touch in that specific space, but most of our funding goes into populations that have some kind of barrier to employment. So DEDO, and I guess it's worth mentioning, let me back up, we have an entire division that is workforce development within our organization, and so we partner economic development and workforce development under the same roof, and Derrick is within that team, and we really find that those two things partnering together is what helps drive our economy.
Adrina, I was curious if you have any examples of corporate KPIs that you've seen as best practice that really lends to diversity.
Yeah, so just trying to pull some of those stats together. So I would say that Hensel Phelps and J.E. Dunn are doing really good work in this space of equity and with regards to holding employees accountable as well as their policies and procedures, how they're getting out into the community, what they're doing with other small business contractors. Many of their KPIs are coming in with respect to like the way in which their project managers operate with certified businesses. And so I would say that Hensel Phelps and J. Dunn are probably among those two. The third would be Sky Blue Builders in Gilmore, who are certified minority businesses. They are also leading in the space of keeping KPIs, but they're doing it so much from a space of the way in which they are training. So they're training opportunities with their staff, training opportunities with the certified firms that they're working with, and then keeping track of, you know, the amount of certified firms that they're also paying it forward to.
And we at DEDO, just to kind of speak to an internal KPI, require what's called race and social justice training of all of our staff. And so it is a difficult, emotionally daunting training, but everybody goes through it and it baselines our understanding of those issues, and that's just something that we require internally and we measure. So
I wanted to, yeah, thank you for saying that. I wanted to add on to that. So in addition to our RSJI training, as part of the Mayor Hancock's initiative early on, because again, it starts with buy-in, and if we are asking other contractors to do it, we need to be doing it ourselves. We do within the city have the Business Equity Leadership Team, and so this is known as BELT, and it's comprised of all of our major city agencies, so like DOTI, DEN, Denver Parks and Recreation, Arts and Venues. We convene on a quarterly basis, and these agencies report back to us on how they're doing with regards to equity. This is all KPI based. So what type of community outreach engagement meetings are you going to? And that means our resource partners, our nonprofits. How are you doing with regards to unbundling your contracts to make this an attractive procurement for small businesses? What type of training is your staff taking, like the race and social justice training? What type of training are you leading for small businesses? And then with regards to involvement in our citywide mentor protege program. So it really has really fleshed out and gotten much wider.
yeah, that was an excellent question.
I know we've talked a little bit about capital, which is an important part of creating sustainable businesses, but there's also another side of things that are very valuable to especially small business owners, like healthcare, childcare, and actually access to having a living
I'm just curious if there's any thoughts or processes going into that, those additional services that are oftentimes missing for small businesses.
Seneca, can you speak to that, or?
A lot of the services that we provide are meant to be sort of wraparound to help small businesses. So we have something called a Business Navigator program, where we go out to individual businesses, we assess their needs, and we connect them with services. So healthcare could definitely be one. Access to childcare could be another. And so basically there are feet on the ground understanding what the needs of an individual business might be. So we really, instead of kind of just making a program, we want to tailor our services to the particular business. And the truth is that there's a lot of resources out there. The problem is that it's so diffuse that it's hard to sort of penetrate them. And particularly if you're running a business, that's taking your time and attention. So you really need sort of somebody working on your behalf, an ambassador, to really track down those resources. And so that's what we're trying to do with our Navigator program.
Well said. Anything to add there? Okay.
So Derrick, you mentioned that you do recruiting from the community. I imagine that means that you're doing some non-traditional sourcing on that. So I'm curious what individuals you're finding.
You know, we work with our registered neighborhood organizations, and I'll give you an example. Montbello, they have a few organizations out there, and we meet with them quarterly to outline how those communities are working on our projects. And one of the things we don't talk enough about is how the data tells the story. And so through our technology, I can tell you exactly how many people from a particular neighborhood are working on a city project. I can tell you what jobs they have. I can tell you how much they're making. And I can tell you information about the contractor and what they've done to recruit people to work in those occupations. But a lot of what we do is work with our community resource partners. And the example I gave you was Montbello, because I know I have a meeting coming up with them next week. And so, I mean, we're out in the community, and it's not just me, and that's the funny thing. You know, I can talk about Montbello, and I go to their registered neighborhood organization. I see someone from Nest. I see someone from DSW. So we work as a team to really focus on how we get the message out about opportunities within both DEDO as well as our projects from the city. So does that answer your question?
Not really. Recruiting sources. How do you actually find?
For your team.
Yeah, where do you find people that are?
Well, I can tell you for us, we work with our Office of Human Resources. Those are the folks who actually go out and do the recruiting. And we talk to them about, well, we want this announcement to go to the Black Chamber of Commerce. We want to work with the Hispanic Contractors Association. And when I talk about recruiting, we go to those organizations that support those populations.
Do any of you have a team member who came to your team from maybe a community organization or another way?
Yeah, I do. One of our contractor liaisons was an employee of Bayard. I'm not sure if many of you know what Bayard does, but they work with homeless populations, and they help eliminate many barriers to get people from that particular situation. And so I have an individual on my team that has come from that area. And I'm going to tell you, I tap him all the time, because I know the mayor's, his big initiative is what? Homelessness. And so I'm connecting my person with the mayor's office to make sure we're supporting that initiative.
We are at time, but exactly. And I know we've had people come through our workforce system who have actually come to work at DEDO. So they came to one of our workforce centers to find a job, loved the experience that they had there, and then wanted to come work at DEDO. So we have a lot of those stories, and it really does work. It really does, you find the passion there. So thank you all for joining us this morning. We appreciate taking the time to listen, and we hope we'll go out and spread the good word. Thank you.